So I plan on doing more videos on the different crests within Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi, but there are other powers within the verse that I still want to talk about. And for the most part, it seems like crests are like a straight power level and skill kind of benchmark. At least from what we see, relatively everybody that is like of a like fair level of power seems to have a crest, at least one. And then like everybody else that is around like the level you'd expect for like what like a singular crest, because we know as well as having a second crest is pretty seemingly a big deal. We don't know if there's like a big extent between like having two of the same crests and having two different crests, or what exactly that entails, but we do know that crests seem to be a fairly decent deal just outright in general. And there are people that I think will eventually get some and, get their own crest. But there are powers within the verse right now besides that. And let me pull up one of the things really fast. I have this as one of the early pages I really wanted to use. And this is the first one where obviously outside of a crest I want to talk about is Nehan and Jack Joe's demon form, like their contracted fighting form. Like, I really like it for one. I think it's one of those designs that's very simplistic yet very very appealing in general design. Like, having that in the official color, I think is his uniform is more green, like green black color kind of shading, and then the white cloak just looks really cool with that badass lance and the horns. It's a really neat form. I give credit to the mangaka for having such a very very strong sense of style. Oh, perfect. This is what actually I was looking for. Because one thing, I actually wasn't thinking about this too much until like yesterday, the day before. I used to think that Men in Black was one of Sakaki's crests, and it still could be. But I think that actually, after really like learning more about the verse as we've been going, and then seeing different examples of powers, I think that this is more of like an ability, because we know that there are just general abilities that don't have anything to do with crests that are like specific in like a style. Like we know, for instance, Kiyoshi, when he buffed like that bowling ball and then used it to beat up that demon, kill him, and exorcise him. When Hitsugi went and created that holy water and was able to undo the poison. Oh, my cat's upset. Unable to do the poison that turned Kiyoshi into a baby for a while. So it would make sense if you have Sakaki, whose powers have a lot in like set with demons and like maybe shadow magic or whatever exactly it is in detail. But it would make a lot of sense if he just has something that just it is baseline, like, oh, my crests have something to do with my demons, so this is like my base power, which is to be able to contract demons in general. So with Nehan and Jack Joe, he's able to set them up to where they are a exorcist and familiar very early on into the story. And from that, we get a lot of general explanation on how the form works. We start to see more of like the verse from a standpoint of somebody who's very new, but also has a lot of untapped potential, because we know with their form, the three factors are the skill and capability of the exorcist, the power level of the demon, as well as the bond between the two, which to me, I felt like those were all very straightforward. Like, those are something you could probably guess just from understanding how like a familiar works in a lot of series, as well as like ones where it's like you essentially, in this case, they kind of fuse. Like, he's literally wearing Jack Joe and gaining a bunch of his powers, whereas with Sakaki and High Stakes, we don't know what High Stakes does on his own, like what kind of like how he would fight and do stuff without Sakaki, because we have a little bit of Jack Joe, and we actually see in the let me see if I have the page. Yeah, we see him use everything in Jack Joe's arsenal from the first general encounter, and then he gets to Lance because I don't know, it's cool. But this is one thing that he used that he hasn't used in his new form, where he like creates like just a spot in the sky and it gathers energy and shoots down. I wonder if there's any other explanation for that other than the fact that just energy blast. But let me move my cat real fast. The only reason I think that there might be something in addition to this specific attack is we've seen pretty much like all of the demons in their racial power, that just black energy that comes off of them, that seems to be something that's tied to their whole race. and then beyond that, demons have like specific abilities and skills that are within whatever type of demon they are. So you could have demons that are all in the same general species, and they're not gonna, they're gonna have some form of seemingly unique style, because Jack Joe and Nehan, or sorry, Jack Joe and Baku Yaraku have to be from the same species, I would assume. They're similar shaped, they have similar horns, they both have that, ghostly veil mask thing going on. So I would assume that they are from the same species. But this is, so I would assume that this might be something different. Like maybe this has to do with whatever Jack Joe's like type of demon specialty is. We don't get anything like that in the battle with Baku Yaraku, unless his is specifically this, the whole thing with his arms. Let me see which one exactly that is. Let me actually enlarge this really fast too. Because like this is one that it's like I wanted to include this primarily because I thought it was interesting that he had this ability to just kind of pick a spot and then have energy gathered and shoot down from just above, and it wasn't used in the fight. But I mean, it wasn't a big deal. It's just like, okay, well maybe that's going to be something we find out later. But okay, this was just the Exorcist contract, and this is this was the thing about this power I really liked, is when you have a person contracted with a demon and they step in their shadow, it creates their natural combat style, as Tsurugi said, which means it's like all of them are going to have a very unique style of combat for what the user and the demon are. I would love to see somebody who has more than one demon to see, it's like, for example, if Sakaki gained another demon, would he have just a different style of gambling game? Well, like instead of the dice roll, it comes out and he's got cards or something. Or like if Nehan got Baku Yaraku somehow and he put it on, it would be like also he would be having a kind of like, a suit where he would put on the mask and gain the powers like overlaid on top of him. And that's how his are always going to be. That's something that we're going to have to wait till later in the verse when we see somebody gain a second demon. I don't imagine there's going to be a ton of people with demon familiars, but I think I would imagine that it is going to be at least a reoccurring thing. It's not going to be as frequent as a lot of other powers, but it's really cool to me of just the fact that, oh yeah, once you get it, even before you start really kind of putting in the effort and training and do all these things for it, you can find out what your power is, and it's like, and again, naturally determined. So it must be something that just like once you do it, it is in a way that your body would already be capable of really like utilizing and harnessing, I would assume. I think that would just make a lot of sense if it's something that again happens naturally, like in specifics to the user. Because again, if Sakaki's whole thing is gambling and his power comes out as gambling, then I would assume that like, okay, it has to have, whatever the character, like their traits and personality, their fighting style and stuff, that has to have some form of input on it. But as it were, we see some of like the aspects of his ability in the Baku Yaraku fight, because it's not just like how Nehan just, okay, yeah, I gained Jack Joe's power. Jack Joe seems to have a level of self-control while he's in this state. And like, for instance, if he's damaged, like if Nehan is damaged, they're both damaged. But if like he does like the whole extending arm thing, and it's just like, it's not Nehan's arm, but it's just this shadow or darkness or whatever, and it gets damaged, it hurts Jack Joe, but I don't think it hurts Nehan. It didn't at least look like Nehan was really in pain from those moves. I might be wrong. But I think it's really cool, the idea that like normally throughout the fight, he has the big arms come out and he's able to either like grapple and move around. He's able to like go in for attacks, and if he misses, he can go. I got that panel. I actually like that one. He goes in for just like another swing. I think it's cool that Jack Joe seems to be able to operate on his own to a level of just, pretty much just working as like a second brain in their fight. Because here we have Baku Yaraku. He goes for just like this spear attack with his trident, and instead of the arms, a foot comes out and it just knocks Nehan up and back. And I think that that's actually just it's a really cool, specific, small, like little ability, because it's not anything complicated, but the idea of just being able to like instantly move, just foot shoots out, slams, pushes you in a direction, and it's by a dude that is like essentially a second brain and a second level of overlay of thought that is able to operate independently of what the user is doing. So let's say like if Nehan is distracted but Jack Joe notices something, he's still able to act and save save Nehan from getting into this situation. Again, I like who we've seen so far, And I've mentioned I really like that the verse has very simple powers early on, but as we've seen with Hitsugi, that there is a level of complexity to how they can use their powers. It all just depends on the person, because obviously it can get way crazier just from what you can do with water. But like the fact that Hitsugi creates boiling water, not from like, oh yeah, I decided that it was going to be hot. He vibrates the molecules to make it hot water. So I just think it's like, okay, well, you can seemingly, as long as you can figure it out and it's within your realm of like what you do with your power, I would assume you could just make techniques and whatnot that, you know, as long as you like apply X, Y, or Z and you're able to figure out how it all works. But here, Jack, Joe, and Nehan, for the most part, their powers are just like, you know, he's the general boost, physical stats, capabilities. I'm wondering what kind of regeneration he should be able to have, because he's got demon powers, and we know that demons having regeneration is completely baseline against for their whole species in this series. So I would assume that he has a good level of regeneration. I don't think it was really brought up in the fight. Maybe it'll be something for later, but well, I don't know. Either way, I like how his hands are in general, like how he uses them in fights, because it's, you know, you can just do like these punches. I think it's cool how he just moves around, you know, has these extra set of arms, Dr. Octopus style, shooting out and helping him move around like sporadically all throughout the battlefield. But also the fact that he's, you know, just went down, and in this case obviously it's like he's grabbing on horns, but he grab on his shoulders or whatever, grabs onto to Baku Yaraku, and then just, you know, jet bolts right into him with his lance. And I think it's just badass in general. But like the utilization of this fighting style, it's just very, it's weirdly unique, but it's not at the same time like, oh man, he's breaking the game with these powers. It's just like, I haven't seen anyone just, yeah, my power is I've got these extra arms for the most part. He's got just a side character bit, but that is his starting bonus amongst, you know, stat increase, you know, it's, whatever the energy is that the demons use. We don't actually know in depth of like how their powers and all of their stuff work, but it's very clear that that Nehan and Jack Joe are using the same powers. I mean, Jack Joe's a demon, so it makes sense, but Nehan in this state is as well. Again, this was really cool, because I love that when he was in this bit, he went for like a lance, like piercing slash, got the side of Bakuraku's head, and then even while like in mid motion, it's like, okay, you missed the general for the most part. It's like you nicked him, but it's like if you miss your, what are you trying for, like a full headshot, but you're moving from the force of your attack, but this independent arm just decides to, okay, I'm gonna sprout out now, come swing, and then just knock into it. It's simplicity, but done in a really cool way, and I like that a lot about the powers and the style in this verse so far. But as well, on top of that, we have, I mean, just general shots. I mean, look how cool he looks. He's got that sick lance. It looks like he's got the legs in the background of this shot too, so I'm wondering what the general purpose of that would be. It's like stabilization, or if he's just like, I guess maybe if you use the legs to catapult yourself while still using the arms to move around or straight, you know, grapple your opponent or whatever you do. But the main thing that he was able to do with it is he does this sick charge. He takes his lance, and it's like, it looks like he's trying to place and pull, but it just compacts and gathers all of this energy into the end of his lance. And again, I wish we knew the details of how their power system works, because the only thing for sure that we know of is that the Exorcist and the demons use a different energy. The Percept power, just from naming, is, you know, it's like religious in the themes and has to do with like God's will and what, I think it was like the right of God or something. It's something specific like that, where it's like, it's very clear to me that the Exorcists are using more of some kind of, you know, holy-ish power, and I don't think it's exactly holy power, but, you know, something in that general idea, whereas the demons are using something probably, you know, darkness or something like that, power of anguish or evil, who knows. And because we do know as well as that angels exist in the verse, so I would assume that maybe the Exorcist power comes from the angels' inner origin, and the demons have this side, and that way you can kind of just maybe have as something like, as direct forward as like, oh yeah, we have two different styles of energy. You either have this one or this one. Maybe a third one gets introduced at some point, but to keep it so it's very straightforward. And again, I think that when you have a style like this, it ends up really holding strong once you master this style. Because I think early Kiyoshi was good, but it didn't have that same level of tone that I think where it's at now, where all the other characters are doing things and they're giving their own input, and it's not just Kiyoshi putting in all the work. Because it's like here Jack Joe and Nehan look damn cool, as well as you got a named attack, demon banishing lance sphere. We don't have a direct like this is what this sphere does. I would assume it's just powerful, little Rasengan looking thing of energy. It's probably literally just a little ball of pure, demon power, and it destroys whatever it touches or something like that. But again, it's the lance. I don't know where the lance came from. I guess he just gets a lance. But it is, again, in a way that it all benefits together and all kind of culminates together, because culminates together, because again, if its power is for the most part he's got shadowy arms and legs coming out the back, and then in this state he's able to wield his weapon with his main arms and has all these like freely independent different appendages moving around. I think one thing that'd be really cool as we see him advance, like in the next main fight for Nehan and Jack Joe, is if, emulating the fight with Bakuyaraku. Because Bakuyaraku at the end was like, well, I'm a demon lord, but I am a warrior, so I'm just going to take my defeat gracefully and just kind of go. And then he got put down by Tanjinchi. But if he's able to think about like the style and get him, okay, how am I going to go about this? He sprouts up 2 extra sets of arms, so he has 6 Jack Joe arms on top of his normal ones. Probably pretty badass. I mean, I would assume he could do 3 times the concentration of his demons, demon banishing lance sphere, demon sphere. I'll just shorten it up, but still really cool. I really want to talk about some of the other characters and their powers. We got to wait a little bit as they go. For the most part, we have Cress, and then we do have some with the demon familiars. We have some with Sakaki, because it's funny, Sakaki, we haven't really had anything for his Cress, but I mean, we still have his demon power, so we're about, for the most part, like probably got like half of it or so. And this is going to be one that, even if somebody doesn't have a crest, I would assume that if somebody is a demon familiar, they could easily be pretty powerful. I mean, look at Nehan and Jack Joe, their first fight. Granted, Nehan's the kind of the crutch in that equation, because he is not a skilled or exorcist relatively at all. But they have an extremely strong bond because they've been best friends for 10 years. And on top of that, Jack Joe has tons of untapped and sleeping potential as the former 5th ranked demon lord. So really good stuff so far. Like I said, this is like a very, very good early series power. And I think it'll be really dope if he can get a crest at some point. But I would love to see him sit on this for a while, because he's a good expansion into what else we could expect besides crest. Because like the other weapons, like the cross gear and just having like, different types of powers and like special weapons is cool. But when you have that kind of defining a type of ability where if somebody rolls up with it, you're like, okay, this guy's probably gonna mean some business. This guy's gonna be serious. Like if somebody shows up and they've got a contracted demon, they're at least gonna have this power. It's not gonna be this exact one that Nehan and Jack Joe has, because all of their combat styles take unique sets to them. So we'll see as things progress. I mean, the crest seem more so for unless you can just jump to it. I would assume Kiyoshi got his pretty early, but everybody else, it seems to me that they eventually work up to it once they get to a certain point in what they're already doing. Well, for instance, with Hitsugi, he had his water gun, and then he ended up getting perfect blue. Well, 2 perfect blues, for anybody who hasn't gotten to that part. But as it were, like I said, solid series, solid powers. I really like the style of this manga, and I can't wait to talk to everybody more about it. I'm trying to mix it up. Like, I can't just talk about Fairy Tail all the time. So at some point, we got to move into some other series. And I still got, like, Ichi the Witch, and I got to get caught up. Because the next one, before I do Ichi the Witch, because, like, Ichi the Witch, I got to wait a while, I think, to do that. Because I want to talk about the magics, but it's like we really only have a couple so far. So, I mean, like, if I waited maybe, like, a couple more months, we'd be in a much better spot. But I also really want to talk about Galaxias. And because it's bi-weekly, it's going to take longer to get through. I might as well get started relatively soon, and we'll talk about like Antares. There's a part in the world building I gotta find before I do any videos, because there's a specific thing I want to talk about. But as it were, Nehan and Jack Joe already with their powers. I mean, they've only won they're 1-0, so they've won their only fight, but that is their only fight, you know, as a undefeated, I guess. Well, no, because they're like 1-1, because if you count Tanjinshi, I mean, he showed up after they're already warned, but it's like clearly it wouldn't have mattered. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys on the next one.